Welcome back to Morning Scramble. I'm DJ Phone, sitting in for Sandy Moss. Our first guest this morning has a very powerful topic to talk about, but it's one that everyone needs to hear about. And it kind of came to the fore about a month and a half ago when Robin Williams, whom everybody loves and knows, when he took his own life. There is, unfortunately, still a stigma attached to depression, mental illness, suicide, and we have the perfect person on board this morning to talk about that. Dr. Elizabeth Caspian from Flagstaff, welcome to Morning Scramble. I know from having talked to you on my radio show that you are just a font of information about this topic because it needs to be brought out. It's first of all, it's something people need to talk about to eliminate the stigma. And first of all, tell us about your practice, exactly what you do.
Before I start about that, I'd just like to say thank you for inviting me. Thank you to AzTV. You are a part of the solution. I'm so grateful when the media gives us a chance to talk about a topic that we tend to avoid in our society. Death, not a fun thing to talk about. Suicide, certainly not a fun thing to talk about. So I started a practice in Flagstaff, came out of residency, pretty traditional psychiatrist, you know, diagnose, treat, find the right medication, and I quickly figured out this wasn't the direction I wanted to go. So I started to change my focus into a wellness focus instead of an illness focus. And I think that's an important topic that we need to have in the mental health community. We need to look at people as, and there's a motto in the world that says, don't ask me what's wrong with me, ask me what happened to me. Because trauma is such a part of mental health. And what we need to talk about is we need as a society to pay attention to childhood trauma. We need to prevent child trauma. That would reduce suicide overnight if we pay attention to our children. The other statistic that I think I sent to you in our talking points today was the fact that aged 15 to 25, the second leading cause of death is suicide. So we as a society need to pay attention. What can we do before age 15 such that when children are facing challenges becoming adults, they have the skills that they need to do self-regulation so that when they get into tangles, they know how to man their nervous system. The nervous system is yours, you can control it, you have command over it, and we need to teach those empowerment skills before age 15.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned the mind part of it and how much we can control, because when I was growing up, I was reading a daily paper every day, and I was reading Ann Landers and Dear Abby every day, and it's amazing how many times, how many troubled people would write in explaining what is really bothering them. And Ann Landers and Dear Abby very frequently had this suggestion: seek counseling. Now tell me why so many people today ask for a pill, ask for an antidepressant rather than seeking counseling from someone who can draw out the roots of their problems.
Well, we live in a society where if you have a headache, take aspirin. So people learn that very early, that a pill might be a solution, and many times it is. But in my opinion, medication does play a role in helping people to stay stable and well. You had a guest on AzTV not long ago, Erin Callanan, who wrote Beautifully Bipolar, and she speaks very vocally about the important role medication played in her health and wellness. However, she also speaks about the importance of family and support. She speaks about belongingness. She speaks about being hopeful, that the prognosis you can overcome. And you can overcome when we look at it from three sources of mental wellness. Social wellness. Do you belong? Do you have hope? Do you see a future for yourself? So social wellness is a very important part of healing and wellness. The second thing we look at is psychological coping capacity. So the psychological coping capacity, these are all skills that can be taught. People can learn how to cope with stress. And that's the beautiful world of counseling, that's the beautiful world of therapy, and now coaching. What I love about the coaching model, which is something I do at my practice, is it reduces stigma. You know, having a coach is okay. You know, if you want to be a great football player, get a great coach.
Sure.
So if you want to be a great player at life, hire a coach. Nothing wrong with that, no stigma attached. And so I love the world of coaching and what that's bringing. There's also peer-to-peer support, which is a new model that the mental health community is addressing now. Much like the 12-step community. You know, what I loved, I was researching for today's show and figured out, did you know Prescott has something in common with New York City, Los Angeles, Seattle, Washington? You are among the top 10 cities to live if you want to be sober. So this community is about sober living, and the reason I bring that up, the majority of suicides are associated with addiction because people are trying to hide from their pain. Trauma in childhood leads to mental health distress because you don't have the coping capacity to deal with the pain. And that's where we need to address this. Before age 15, we need to get to our traumatized children and teach them the skills they need to know that you can overcome. You really can. And that's the message that we're trying to share. With the peer-to-peer models, you can go to a peer who's struggling. You don't have to even go to a professional person, and they're empowering peers to support peers, and I really love that model. Nothing like the 12-step community. Prescott's amazing with that, and I just respect this community so much.
Now, when it comes to dealing with people in pain, you have your own experience with that. I
Yes.
understand that a lot of your impetus toward going into psychiatry was because of what happened with your Uncle Doug. Can you tell us about that?
I can. I think there's a photo I shared, and I don't know if you can see that on the screen. It's right here. And Uncle Doug was actually in Vietnam when I was born, the year I was born. He served for a year in Vietnam, drafted, and he was one of the kindest, most gentle people you could ever meet in your life. And when I was 11 years old, Uncle Doug could not tolerate the pain he experienced in war, and he couldn't tolerate some of the stresses going on in his life. And of course, in that, you know, we've made a lot of progress in the mental health world. It's saying it's really okay to seek help. But in 1976, we had a long way to go. And seeking help was not something that was a part of it. So he ended up taking his life. And as an 11-year-old, I was seeking to try to understand that.
And we're going to talk more about Uncle Doug and how you recovered from that in just a moment. This is Morning Scramble in beautiful Prescott. I'm DJ Phone. This is Dr. Elizabeth Caspian. We're going to talk more about her Uncle Doug, how she recovered, and reducing suicide stats right after this break. Stay tuned.